We have a great slate of games this upcoming weekend, and honestly, I couldn't pick one team, much less one matchup to spotlight, so I really just wanted to talk about all four teams, highlight their matchups. Basically, this entire video is going to be picks.
Perfect.
So our first matchup of this conference championship weekend that I wanted to highlight is the AFC championship matchup hosted by the Kansas City Chiefs, being visited by the Cincinnati Bengals, the defending AFC champions. The rematch that I think a lot of us were really hoping for going into this NFL season is here. It's upon us, right? We got to see a little preview of that during the regular season, in which the Cincinnati Bengals won. Joe Burrow so far on his career has not lost to Patrick Mahomes, so that's just an interesting little tidbit going into this matchup. But I did want to highlight both these teams, the situation going into this game. Obviously, if the Buffalo Bills would have won last weekend, this game would very well be being played in Atlanta, away from Kansas City, away from the noise, but we are being treated to that home field advantage. We are being treated to the traditional number one seed hosting the AFC championship respectively. And honestly, I'm really excited for this matchup. We have two very high-powered offenses, easily the best two quarterbacks remaining in the playoff picture, and in my opinion, two of the best quarterbacks really in the entire NFL as we speak. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. It's going to be a heck of a matchup. I'm incredibly excited. So let's first spotlight the visiting team here. Let's spotlight the Cincinnati Bengals. What do they do well? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are they bringing into this matchup? And at the end, we're going to talk about our picks after the Kansas City Chiefs. So first things first, they bring a lot of offensive firepower. The Cincinnati Bengals, like I just mentioned, Joe Burrow, and then alongside him, you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, as well as just some other interesting playmakers along this offense, being spearheaded by head coach Zach Taylor. Now, obviously, you've got a lot of big juggernauts here. Each one of those offensive weapons that I called by name, Mixon, Higgins, and Chase, all over 1,000 yards this past season, all able to find the end zone with some pretty regular frequency during this past season. Chase, even more so impressive because he missed a chunk of games during this past regular season, still able to lead the team in receiving yards. So the connection between Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow is absolutely off the charts. They played together, obviously, at LSU. Now, some of their other strengths, they do have some playmakers on the defensive side of the football. Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson, and of course, you've got Logan Wilson, the linebacker in the middle, a very solid and very talked about linebacker in my eyes. And in the secondary, you also got Jesse Bates, another underappreciated guy when it comes to the NFL level, a guy who deserves a little bit more love and is a very effective safety in the back end. So you've got some key playmakers at every single level, but what makes this team so good? Obviously, I think this team just brings a lot of edge. They had that chip on their shoulder last year, not completing the job. This year is that absolute mission. Now, what else do they do well? The Cincinnati Bengals offensively are top 10 in, excuse me. Well, they have one of the top 10 offenses in the entire NFL. They're top 10 in points. They're top 10 in a number of yardage categories, but defensively, they are top 10 in defensive points and rushing yards. This defense really does a good job of bending and not breaking. However, now that we've highlighted their strengths, let's talk about their weaknesses a little bit. Generally, a mediocre defense at some of the other levels. The passing defense is bottom 10 in the NFL, and they're kind of in the middle of the pack when it comes to yards per game as a whole, but that is a bend, don't break philosophy. The real shining spotlight here of weakness for the Cincinnati Bengals is the offensive line. Unfortunately, just really hasn't gotten that much better since last season. Joe Burrow is the 6th most sacked quarterback in the entire NFL, and even walking into this playoff game just this postseason, the 3rd most sacked quarterback in the NFL postseason, and obviously the most sacked quarterback remaining in this playoff picture. So if the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win this game, they absolutely need some superb offensive line play. Last week, they found it, only allowing Joe Burrow to get sacked just once against the Buffalo Bills, and they had over 30 first downs in that game. So if they're going to win this game, the offensive line absolutely has to show up. Now let's talk about their opponent, the home team, Kansas City Chiefs. They've got a number of offensive strengths, of course, but the core three pieces that we have here are Patrick Mahomes, who is the likely NFL MVP, at least in my eyes. You've got Travis Kelce, who has been a ridiculously talented tight end for the majority of his career, is currently the best tight end in the NFL. And the third head of this three-headed monster is the offensive mind of Andy Reid. He's had a number of years in the NFL, of course. If you're watching football like myself, I'm 25. It feels like my entire life Andy Reid has been a head coach in the NFL, is one of the best offensive minds currently in the league, and currently also happens to have a very savvy defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo, who has done a very good job leading this group into another postseason, a very aggressive group, a very grinded out group, a group that obviously also puts their head down and tackles well. But getting back to the offense, of course, the offense absolutely running the show here. You've got a offense that, realistically speaking, is again one of the best offenses in the entire NFL, one of the league leaders in points, passing yards, and also is able to get it done in the running game, but their strength for sure is in the passing game. The offensive line has held up pretty well for Patrick Mahomes as well this year. So that is a general layover of what actually the Chiefs do well. And obviously, for the last few years, if you've watched football, you watch this channel, you probably know that the Kansas City Chiefs are very good on offense. Now, we do have to highlight their weaknesses, though, just like every other team. The differential in the regular season, -3, currently among the 4 remaining playoff teams, that is the lowest. So a -3 turnover differential means they give the ball away more than they get it back into the hands of their offense. Through the playoffs, though, so far, no turnovers that we can see yet. However, middle of the pack defense statistically, solid playmakers on multiple levels, but not a lot of truly absolute elite playmakers outside of maybe Chris Jones. I mean, you've got Bolton in the second level at the linebacker position, who's done very well so far this year, but hasn't quite gotten to the level of some of the elite level linebackers in the NFL. And in the secondary, a lot of respectable names, but no cornerstones in that secondary. And then the Mahomes high ankle sprain is going to be the biggest weakness for these Kansas City Chiefs. His lack of mobility for this upcoming matchup is going to be huge against those pass rushers for the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals boasting a very strong front four on the defensive line, and even with a strong offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes' ability to break the pocket, be mobile, evade tacklers is what helps open up the offensive passing game and open up really Andy Reid's playbook. And dealing with a high ankle sprain that usually sidelines guys for 3 to 4 weeks, that lack of mobility is going to be ever present. I think the Bengals are going to bring a lot of heat in this upcoming matchup. They're going to be singling in on Travis Kelce as that receiving option and forcing guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Kadarius Toney, Marquez Valdes-Scantling to have to beat them at their respective positions. I think this is going to be a lot of offensive firepower, personally. I think this is going to be a very exciting matchup, but that high ankle sprain for Patrick Mahomes is really going to be the key factor here. And for that reason, I am going to be taking the Cincinnati Bengals to once again upset Kansas City at home and proceed to another Super Bowl. Now, let's talk about the other matchup here. We've got a really fun matchup, obviously, between two very good, very well-rounded teams, the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers. You've got two younger offensive-minded head coaches in Nick Sirianni and Kyle Shanahan. But what these teams are bringing is not just a lot of offense. These teams are bringing some of the best defenses in the NFL. Arguably, the 49ers, let's start with them, have the best defense among the two, but honestly, you could argue it's splitting hairs. But let's talk about what that defense brings to the table. Number 1 in total yards per game, first in points allowed per game at about 16 points allowed per game during the regular season, second in rushing yards allowed per game. A generally amazing defense with playmakers at every single level. Fred Warner in the middle of the pack, leading the linebacker group, leading that front set, really just leading the entire defense. League leader Nick Bosa on the defensive line, edge rusher with 18.5 sacks. And of course, Hufanga, the all-pro selection in the secondary, has had a huge coming out this year and is a really impressive safety, honestly. Plays the ball very aggressive. understands how to play against pretty much any type of receiver, tight ends, slot receivers, is able to play the ball very, very well in space. Honestly, he brings a lot to the table. I don't think he's being talked about quite enough this season, even after making an all-pro team. And then let's spotlight the offense, full and stacked with playmakers. A strong offensive line being anchored on the left side by the best offensive lineman currently in the NFL, the savvy veteran Trent Williams. Then at receiver, you've got Deebo Samuel, who is a dynamic threat who can take it out of the backfield. Brandon Ayuk, who was pretty much the best receiver, well, the best pure receiver, I guess is one way to put it, for the San Francisco 49ers this season, leading the team in receiving yards. Then, of course, you've got George Kittle coming out of the tight end spot, one of the best run-blocking tight ends in the entire NFL, also a dangerous receiving threat. And then, of course, you've got Christian McCaffrey, their number one running back, who is just as big of a receiving threat as another Swiss Army knife within this offense. You've got three versatile playmakers for Kyle Shanahan to scheme and build a game plan around, and all of that is being, well, conducted, obviously by Kyle Shanahan, but being, painted onto that canvas by Brock Purdy, their third string quarterback, Mr. Relevant, the final pick in this past year's NFL draft, the rookie. I am tired of the narrative that Brock Purdy is now an untested quarterback, beating multiple playoff level teams. The Seattle Seahawks twice beat them in the wild card. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers they beat during the regular season. The Miami Dolphins that even squeaked into the playoff team beat them. And now the Dallas Cowboys. He did not fold under the immense amount of pressure that they were bringing his way. He was able to find his key playmakers, put the 49ers in position to win the game. The defense absolutely came through, but Brock Purdy doing his job to not lose the 49ers the game. You could say he is the key to their victory or to their losses, but so far, Brock Purdy hasn't lost a single game as an NFL starter. I think that absolutely commands respect. It's playoff time. The kid's got 2 playoff wins under his belt. I think it's time to give Brock Purdy even more respect and a little more admiration than, heck, he's even getting in the national media spotlight right now. I'm on the Brock Purdy train. I think he's playing immensely good football. But with all those strengths, we still have to highlight their weaknesses. Now, the weaknesses, again, you're kind of relying on a rookie quarterback. With all due respect, give the kid his roses, but also recognize this is a rookie quarterback that you are dealing with. If you're able to get this kid uncomfortable, that is the hope that you have to have if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. Get this kid uncomfortable, bring a ton of pressure, force him into mistakes, but he's not made a ton so far on the season. Only 1 interception during the regular season, and so far, the postseason, he's done well enough, obviously, to get them all the way to the NFC Championship in a position to go to another Super Bowl. And defensively, there is a bit of a kink in the armor. Now, secondary ranked in the bottom half of the NFL, allowing 229 passing yards per game. So if you're going to beat these San Francisco 49ers, if you're going to beat this defense, keep them off balance. You're going to have to rely on your passing game to get things done. And honestly, I think it's a huge task to ask anybody in the NFL currently to go up against this defense and put up some terrific numbers, put up over 300 total yards, because they're bringing the heat on the rushing side of the game. They're going to try to make you a single option offense. And honestly, they're doing things very, very, very well. DeMeco Rines leading a great and dangerous defensive group. But there's 2 teams in this NFC Championship, so it's time to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. First things first, Philadelphia's strengths. They are number 1. Let's talk about their defense. Firstly, number 1 in sacks. They have an amazingly dangerous pass rush. We talked about getting after Brock Purdy, making him uncomfortable. If anybody left in this NFL playoff is going to do it, it's going to be these Philadelphia Eagles. Number 1 in sacks. 4 rushers with over 10 sacks, being led by Hassan Reddick, a free agent pickup for them, but they've got a ton of dangerous and devastating pass rushers. Second in NFL yards per game, just behind the San Francisco 49ers. Number 1 in passing yards allowed per game. They are going to do everything they can to bring that rush and take away passing options and passing lanes. This is a smart and savvy veteran-led defense that knows how to minimize quarterbacks. Now, 8th in total points allowed per game at 20 points. So you've only got a 4-point difference between regular season statistics here between these 2 defenses. 2 amazing defensive units. a dynamic and explosive offense that was 3rd in yards per game, 8th in passing yards, 5th in rushing yards, 3rd in points per game, all being led by the versatility and the maestroing of, again, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has had a huge season. Walking into this year, I said he had to have a huge campaign to remain the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles, and so far he has absolutely done more than deliver. Missing a couple of games, you saw the slowdown for the Philadelphia Eagles. It looked like their offense had to get a little bit more condensed for Gardner Minshew, but having Jalen Hurts come back, that first game against the New York Giants, absolutely demolishing the division rival. Look, Jalen Hurts, the real deal. This offense is absolutely cooking. But let's talk about his weapons. You've got A.J. Brown, who's one of the best receivers in the NFL this season. You've got Devontae Smith, the former Heisman winner, has really embraced his role in this offense as the true number 2, but is an absolutely dangerous number 2 wide receiver, is honestly as talented as anybody in the NFL currently. Tight end Dallas Goedert has had a very strong campaign out of the backfield. A resurgence for Miles Sanders in a make or break year has absolutely made the most of his opportunities. And the offensive line, pretty solid all the way around, I'm not going to lie to you. However, that leads right into our weaknesses, right? They have a lot of talented guys on the offensive line, but Jalen Hurts was the 7th most sacked quarterback in the NFL. So what this offensive line can do is absolutely dominate in the running attack of this game, but the offensive side of things, Jalen Hurts, if he gets a little bit flustered, might be taking sacks. The offensive line is going to give you a few opportunities to get into the backfield and fluster Jalen Hurts. Now, besides that, they just kind of have a middle of the pack rushing defense in general. So the defensive side of the football, there is some openings for the 49ers to exploit. You've got Christian McCaffrey, arguably the best running back, if not one of the best running backs in the entire NFL. Elijah Mitchell as well. No slouch as the number 2 running back threat for the Kyle Shanahan offense. Can also catch passes out of the backfield in an offense that absolutely starts and wins with the running attack for the 49ers. That's what they're probably going to be looking to exploit. We've got a really good one on our hands here. I think it's going to be incredibly exciting. I can see this game really going either way. Could it be an absolute, slug match between 2 offenses? Sure, but is it more than likely to be another big defensive matchup like we saw with the Niners and the Cowboys last week? I'm leaning towards yes. I think both these defenses are going to come to play. I think they're both going to be looking to limit the opposing quarterback. Honestly, there's a ton of talent and a lot of weapons on the field. Man, it's really tough, honestly, for me to pick this matchup. I think either one of these teams, realistically, with no disrespect, could absolutely win this game. Philadelphia, even with that home field advantage, man, Kyle Shanahan always comes prepared for everything, it seems. He's looking for that final Super Bowl win, and I think the 49ers are just going to squeak things out just at the end. I have a feeling this is going to be a close and tightly contested matchup, but I'm taking the 49ers here. I'm taking Mr. Relevant Brock Purdy. I'm taking Kyle Shanahan with those chips on their shoulders to go and make another appearance in the Super Bowl against, like I said earlier, the Cincinnati Bengals. So with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching the video. Of course, feel free to stick around and watch some more content. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and of course, get the bell on to know every single time I'm dropping a video. My name's Tristan Blake Rines. I'm going to catch you in the next one. Adios.